I started playing Unblock on my Steam Deck, but I don't remember why I eventually moved on to my main gaming PC. Seeing as how it came off as visually impressive on the Steam Deck and even better on my PC, I'm glad that I did. I'm sure that Unblock running on the Unreal Engine has a lot to do with why it came off as visually appealing as it did, but I also don't want to dismiss the talent that clearly went into Unblock's art department. This spilled over and was seen with Unblock's cool level design. I was left thinking that a lot of attention went into this. They came off like open world levels where some of them featured connecting paths. Simply put, these levels were very dense. It was to the point where I didn't mind that Unblock only featured a handful of levels. Each offered enough of a challenge and general enjoyment to the point where it took me around 30 minutes to get through most of them. Unblock is a platformer, so it's not a surprise that getting around is a big part of its gameplay. It could have stuck to the basics, but I liked that it made use of different mechanics to get around. The bare bones platforming was enough because of the challenge it had to offer, but adding something like triggered obstacles helped spice things up. This was gradually introduced, and it was well done. That matters because if it's done too soon, it'll come off as overwhelming when you're just getting your feet wet. If it's done too into the game, then it'll come off as too little, too late. This aspect of Unblock was well done, but I can't say the same for other parts of it. One of the main issues I had with Unblock is that I would have preferred pure platforming over having to get across tight spaces. It was to the point where I found myself thinking, they should have called this game Walk the Plank. I realized that a platforming game doesn't mean it can only feature jumping from platform to platform. Changing the movements that you're forced to utilize in order to advance helps spice things up. While that's true, I was left feeling that Unblock came off as much harder than it needed to. I can see why no checkpoints became a thing after a certain point, but that not being part of Unblock felt like an artificial way of making the game harder. Since its levels were pretty long, making a mistake and falling into water/lava led to having to restart from the very beginning. This wasn't too bad to deal with the majority of the levels, but the lava one in particular really got to me. It's because of how intensely frustrating it was having to deal with precise platforming, falling, and having to start over very far away from where I left off. I was stuck on one section of the lava level for hours because of this. The fact that I kept playing for as long as I did shows that I still enjoyed this, no matter how infuriating it was to deal with, but it didn't need to be like that. It wasn't just because this section featured very precise platforming or no checkpoints. It's also because of awkward camera angles, platform placement, and an awkward feeling jump. The awkward camera angles and platform placement reminded me of FF7 when you're trying to reach Shinra headquarters. This part was so frustrating to deal with that it's been a thing online for years. I don't mind difficult platforming, especially since I'm a fan of precise platformers, but when I find it hard to line up a jump, that's when I have a problem. I have no problem trying something and failing over and over again, mainly because that's one way of learning, but there's a point where that gets old. The lava level featured a section where I needed to land on uneven beams. It didn't help that the jump in Unblock manages to feel floaty and stiff at the same time. I can understand making it so that a jump is set in place after it's started, but it feeling like you're being held back as you're jumping felt really weird to me. It was only after hours of frustration that I realized that using the character's shadow as a sort of guide helped me to land difficult jumps. The fact that this was doable showcases the depth this mechanic has to offer, but it came off like a necessary evil. I can accept that this strategy I stumbled into was necessary for the other levels, but the fact that it was only needed for the lava level shows how much it stands out. Unblock's one of those games where I quickly put in a decent number of hours into it. It's not only because I liked it, but also because some of the frustrating parts left me wanting to rise to the occasion. I knew that I was capable of advancing through some of Unblock's hardest areas, but making that happen was easier said than done. Its visual offerings are enough to leave me wanting to recommend Unblock, but if you're the kind of player that avoids games with a few yet significant flaws, it might not be for you. What's the longest you've spent on a challenging section in a game? Should a game include checkpoints if its levels are long? Have you ever made use of an unconventional tactic to overcome a difficulty in a game? If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, share, and if you're up for it, buy me a coffee. Thank you very much for watching.